Okay, so basically what we're doing here is we're going through and doing a quick analysis to show the increase in cost versus the increase in profitability. Because we have a campaign that we were looking at where we had an inbound cost of $3.50. We raised that cost up and it increased our volume by about 30% or 40%. So we went from, say, 100 leads a day at a value per lead of $5 and a cost per lead of $3.50 to increasing our cost per lead up to $4.75 to get more margin or to get more volume. We did receive 40% more volume, but then I think what we frequently will forget is, are we making more money? Just because we had an increase in cost or an increase in volume and we're still profitable, are we actually making more? So this spreadsheet that we've created here really will show you, hey, is it worth it? I don't know. So we look and we just do a quick value per lead income calculation. We have a value per lead of, say, $5 here. We show that at 100 per leads, we're making $500 at a $350 expense because our cost per lead is $3.50, which shows us a profit of $150. In this case, when we have an inbound lead increase to 140 leads, which we're excited because we're getting more volume, but our cost per lead goes up to $470, we now have an income of $700, but an expense of $658 and a profit of $42. So we have dramatically decreased our profitability by huge percentage points, because now we're talking about 1/3 the profit margin, even though we increased our inbound lead volume by 40%, and our costs only increased by 30% roughly. But we're talking about, even though we had a 30% increase in cost, we have a 300% decrease in profit. So really, when you're looking at your campaigns, you're going to need to balance these two and ask yourself, okay, if I send more leads, am I actually making more money? Because the likely answer is no, not unless you're actually sending in a boatload more. So if we actually sent in 500 leads and our cost per lead was $470, now we're making the same amount of profit and we have more leads available to us. Then the secondary consideration is value per lead. So this would be, let's call this day 0 through 12, and let's call this day 0 or day 12 through 30. Now what you have to do is, okay, this is where I'm making the bulk of my money back and what I've determined my value per lead. So now in this case, so if we have a cost per lead coming in of 0 because we've already paid for these on our front end, if I was generating the same leads and the value per lead on day 12, or excuse me, day 13 through 30, if the value per lead now comes in at $2, then that changes things drastically. So now you could end up creating your overall value and saying, okay, well, my overall value is what? My overall value would be a calculation of the profits from, or my value per lead would then become an equation of this plus this. So your value per lead now is 7. And then your income and expense, your cost per lead would be an equation of your cost per lead here and your cost per lead here. Now you drag that down and you say, okay, now I've got 4 times my profit because I was able to squeeze another $2 per lead out of my leads. However, if you notice, actually what these should be is calculations also. Let's delete those. So now what we'll do is we'll make this an equation of this inbound lead volume, and this an equation of this inbound lead volume, and the same thing here for the overall. So you only have to fill it in once. There. Now you'll see that if we say, okay, maybe on days 0 through 12 we have, let's say, now we've got 150 leads coming back in again. So now we'll look at this and go, okay, well, even though we're making 1/3 the profit that we did on days 0 through 12, the fact that we made another $2 per lead over the course of the next 20 days in our series, that changes the entire dynamic of the campaign now into profitability, but it means the 30-day profitability versus a longer tail profitability. Then if you were to really, really want to get tricky with this, and you say, okay, well, how much is that lead worth to me over the course of the next year? Then you start really finding out how much you can truly afford per lead, and then it just becomes a matter of cash flow management, where you need to make sure that in those first 30 days, you're pulling your profit back from your lead, or really, hopefully, in your first 0 to 12 days, you're pulling the profit back from your lead so that you can end up making the money back right away for more media spend and helping more customers. So let's see. We see that now, even though, if you don't have your system, the point of this, let me rephrase. If you don't have your systems refined to where you actually have value from day 13 to 30, look what you can afford. You cannot afford this. You cannot afford to send out another 150 and pay more because you'll be sacrificing your profits. However, if you just got an incremental amount more money, so say 30% more value from your customer over the course of days 13 through 30, through all of your systems that you've created, now you've got a considerable chunk more profit here to be able to play with. So you can say, you know what, I can do it, but let's say like your value per lead is $5 and your cost per lead is $4.70. You would not want to do this at 120 leads. You're better off taking right now, even in this 30-day sequence, you're better off taking the higher profitability at 100 leads because your cost per lead is lower versus the 120 or the 20% gain and a 4.7 cost per lead. So paying more doesn't necessarily get you more. Paying more sometimes can actually just cost you more in your profit. And even with this on a 30-day cycle, you're still making less money. Here's where you would end up going into your longer tail where you say, okay, let's look at 30 through 60, 60 through 90, 90 through 120, 120 through the end of the year, and actually have some real projected values on your leads so that you know, hey, you know what, I can afford it, but I can't afford it until day 60, or I can't afford it until day 20, or whatever it may be. You will probably start out in this area with your marketing efforts, and that's okay. Just make sure that when you think about your lead value and your inbound lead cost, that you remember paying, just because you pay 30% more and you get 30% more traffic, let's say this is 130, does not mean you're making more. It just means you're paying more per lead that you're getting, and you're actually losing money. So even here, even with the 30-day sequence where you have a total value per lead over the course of 30 days of $7, you're still losing more money with more leads being driven in there. This is where you have to start really getting into, okay, what else am I sending my leads? How have I fully monetized this user base? Okay? I hope this was helpful for you guys. I'll make this spreadsheet available. Okay, bye. Okay, I thought of another point that I had to add in here before I went too far. When you look at this, you cannot assume that because you're paying more per lead that your value per lead stays the same. You need to monitor your value per lead over the course of the next 2 weeks, month, year to determine if you're paying $4.70 for a lead, are you getting a better quality customer? Because it is possible that these other 30 leads that you've been driven at a higher cost per lead are better customers. It's also possible they're not. So your value per lead at a $4.70 could actually end up coming in at 5.7, or it could come in at 3.5, which you end up really hurting yourself. So don't make the assumption that your value per lead will stay the same no matter how much you pay per lead, because that's not the case. It will change. So if it comes in at a 5.8 value per lead, then you actually make a considerable amount more money. Or it comes in at 6 per lead. Or let's say it stays the same. If it stays exactly the same, but then you have a higher, longer tail value of, say, $3 per customer because you're paying more. Now, you may ask the question, if I'm paying more per lead, how in the hell does that drive a better customer? Well, the answer is simple. You may be outbid by your competition on higher quality sites. And by paying more per lead, these other 30 leads that come through, and some of the others that you are getting here also may be higher quality customers from better quality sites that require a higher payment to get them. So you may end up coming in with a close or similar value per lead here, but in the long term, they end up being worth more to you because they take more upsells, they attend more webinars, and they just become a better client. So don't make the assumption that your value per lead will stay a constant based off your cost per lead. Always know your value per lead based on what the campaign that you're sending, if you can, the cost that you're paying, and don't make the assumption that you're not making as much or making more. You have to know your numbers in order to have this work out well for you. And a lot of this stuff, we're working with Google and others right now to help you come up with simplified systems so that you can have this value per lead calculated for you for the lifetime of the customer very simply and easily. Another thing, one more thing to keep in consideration, if we were to take and let's insert a couple of cells here. I know I probably don't have to do this, but just for clarification's sake, let's say we take and copy this, and let's call this day 30 through 360. Okay, so if this is the case, and we say, okay, inbound lead volume is what? Let's move this up here. And let's say over the next year, you have another $3 per customer. So think about that. Over the course of 11 months, you're able to get another average of 30 cents per month. Is that right? Yeah, roughly. Actually, less than that. 30 cents per month per person from the lead that comes through. That's a pretty low estimate, especially considering you got $7 from them from the beginning. Maybe you get another 30 cents per for the rest of the year. Let's look and see what this does to your overall values now. So if you look at your overall value now, you say, okay, let's see, value per lead. We just need to add another one in here, which would be plus B19. There we go. Now we've got considerably more profit, even though we've lost money up here. We've lost, 500% drop in ROI. Here, we're actually turning a considerable profit because the year value is played into the equation. Now, you can't necessarily bank that or say, hey, you know what? I know for sure I'm going to get that all the time, because you'll have economic conditions change. But once you start identifying this better, and not just 30 to 360 or 356 or whatever the hell you want to call it, if you have 30 to 60, 60 to 90, you start breaking out these lead values over the long term of your campaign. You can start going, hey, you know what? Okay, I can afford it doing this. If I have a credit card that has this much float on it, I can do it for this much time period. I know I don't have to pay until the end of 30 days, so I will stay a $10,000 or $100,000 a month company while I grow my business out and I take my cash flow projections in. But if you do that, you may want to stick with high profitability, low volume, in lieu of higher volume and lower profitability on the front end. As you grow your business, then you can start looking at, okay, I can afford to pay more. And now I'll pay up to $470, in which case I'll have less profitability in the front end, but more long tail profitability on the back end, and I'll still make more money. Okay, I hope this is making sense for you guys. And this is, for a lot of people, this is the reason why when they get into this space late in the game, they're like, man, I'm just having a hard time competing. Well, that's because the other guys are looking at this and you're not. If you're not looking at this and you're only looking at this, it's real clear, hey, how come I'm not making any money? How come I can't compete? What are these guys doing differently? Well, they know these numbers. And they know that the more customers they drive through and the more that they court those customers, the more profitability they're going to have. So if you're trying to figure out why it's not working, keep one thing in consideration. It is possibly because you're not looking at the long-term, long-tail value of your lead or prospect. Okay, guys? All right, again, hope this was helpful. Thanks. Bye.